I'm here with the Leader of the Opposition, Andrew Little. What brings you to Nelson?
Well, one of my commitments when I became leader was to spend the first year getting out and about across as much of New Zealand as I could, and that meant getting to as many provincial centres and towns around about the place that I can. So this week it's Nelson's turn, so I'm here too. I'm meeting with party members obviously, and then I've got a day of visits to various places and businesses and organisations just to catch up and see what the issues are, listen to people and hear what they have to say and help us inform what we need to do, the kind of issues that we need to pick up as a political party.
Right. Okay, now, the polls are sometimes they're quite depressing. At this stage, it's they're saying that you've dropped 2% as preferred leader. What do you think about that?
Well, it depends what poll you look at. I mean, one poll has me going up, another one had me going down. Pretty much, and they're all within the margin of error. So, you don't live your life driven by polls necessarily. I'm very pleased with where things are at. Certainly since I became leader, we've had a big lift in the polls. We're in the sort of early 30s, which is where as a party I expected, or at least wanted us to be by this time. We always predicted that it'll take a little longer for others. A lot of other people who are now listening to us, now seeing that we're there, but want to see that we are, we've really serious about making the change, listening to people and making ourselves viable for 2017. So I'm not at all concerned about it. I'm very optimistic. I'm very pleased with where we're at. I'm very pleased with the feedback that we're getting, very pleased with the work that the caucus, for example, is doing. Everybody's doing amazing stuff, focused on the issues, and it's all going well. So it was never going to change overnight. We always knew we had a big job of work to do. It's happening and things are progressing well.
Right. Okay, so look, we've obviously you've analysed what went wrong at the last election. The party seems much more cohesive now, do you think?
Yeah, I think we've got through, it was a difficult election, very disappointing obviously for a lot of Labour supporters, and we've gone through our own leadership election, so we've changed leaders, and I think what we've seen now is everybody kind of knuckling down now. I think everybody realises the task at hand. We've got a caucus that's working well, that's united, focused on the issues. So those things are making a difference. I think people are starting to see that. The next big challenge is, as we get through the policy issues, work out the big issues that we want to go into 2017 on. That work's underway now. So, yeah, it was always going to be a big job to turn around things from a 25% result in the election. That's underway. Progress is being made. The fundraising is underway. A lot of the things that appeared in the review that was came out in the last couple of days, a lot of those things are being addressed anyway, and we're well underway on that. So it's all heading in the right direction.
Now, okay, so you've got it, the next elections. Well, so we're way away yet, but of course there's a bit of fundraising to go. What kind of fundraising efforts are going in there to help Labour build its profile?
There's a range of things. So there's probably three types of fundraising we do. One of the new ones is the online fundraising, and we've got some outstanding people who are helping us with that. We've started that already. That's been very successful. We've tried it. We've tied it to issues, and we've gone out, put information out, suggested that people could help by donating, and they are. So there's that. There's the traditional sort of things that the party has been doing at the local level and at the more the national level. So the kind of the fundraising stalls, the little events, and then the bigger events that tend to raise big chunks of cash. Then there's the corporate outreach. That's well underway too. We're getting a good response from the business sector who want to talk to us. They're interested in us now. They want to have a talk. And some are willing to support us too. So three strands of fundraising all underway, and I'm very pleased with how that's all going.
Okay. So Andrew, how is it going with the feedback from the smaller regions as you're going around the country?
It's been good. I think the overwhelming message I'm getting is just how neglected a lot of the people in the regions are feeling. And you look at the most recent budget, there's absolutely nothing in that for regional New Zealand. A lot more money going particularly into Auckland and into other metropolitan centres, but nothing for the regions. And I think, particularly now with issues like the lower dairy payout, that's going to affect the regions a lot more than it will the big cities. People are going to start to feel that. And I think the message we've been saying is actually it's time for the government to wake up and realise that the regions need a bit of support too. They've had a lot of funding for roading projects taken out of the regions and put into Auckland. Government departments have cut their regional workforces and centralised things back to Wellington. These are all things that you take those sorts of things out of the regions and they really feel it. So we have a view which is that the government does have a role, a responsibility, and to work with local communities and local authorities to make sure that we're sustaining and supporting the regions, attracting people there, making them good places to live, making sure the infrastructure is in place. So what people can expect to see from us is a greater emphasis on those things that are going to attract people to the regions, make provincial cities and towns a place to invest, to do business, to work and to live. And we want to see more of that.
Right, so making them more viable.
Yeah, this the other thing too about, you look at the rapid growth in the size of Auckland. Part of that is our immigration policy, sort of when people get to the border and they stay in Auckland. We'd like to see an immigration policy used to attract people to other parts of New Zealand too. Those coming in under the investor category, coming here to invest their wealth. Well, we'd like to see that put in other parts of New Zealand too and sustain local economy. So it's just about being a bit more creative about what we've got.
Now, there's a high turnover of housing in Auckland. They're saying that people barely own the houses 2 years before flicking them on. So obviously people are seeing properties as an investment rather than just as something that they're going to live in. How can Labor address that problem? A capital gains tax was touted at the last election. Is that still a possibility? Is that on the table at all?
Well, when we look at what the figures are showing is that the capital gains tax we promoted would only have applied to investment properties. When we look at the figures of people who are buying and selling investment properties within a 2-year period, it's less than 1,000. So it won't make a huge difference. I think we need to rethink that. I think in terms of the issue of those who are speculating and taking advantage of that, I think we've got to look at a range of issues so that the people aren't getting a tax-free income. We know they're earning an income off it, but they're getting a tax-free income. The bigger issues in Auckland are the impact that speculators are having on house prices. So we need to do things that are going to interrupt that. So things like a state-led house building program. The government's talked about that too, but every time they announce a big plan, we then find that they don't have any detail supporting it. What started out about 2 weeks ago as a plan to release 500 hectares for building new houses, and we're now down to 30 hectares. And then now we've got a dispute with local iwi over their right of first refusal. So this is a government that sees problems and announces solutions that haven't been thought through at all, full of snags. You actually need to, there's a lot of things that need to be done to address the house problem in Auckland. In terms of the rest of the country, what the big issue is, people cannot get into their own homes. We have the lowest level of home ownership in more than 60 years. So you'll hear from Labor soon about initiatives we want to take to make home ownership a real dream again for most New Zealanders, a dream that they can achieve.
We've got the KiwiSaver scheme, and the government's kind of put the kibosh on stimulating that. Will Labor do anything to put a bit more life into that scheme?
Yeah, well, since the national government's been in, I think there's 8 different cuts they've made to KiwiSaver. We're keen to turn that around. We'll do that as quickly as we can. We obviously, the closer we get to the election, we do our financial planning. We'll do, what's affordable and what's responsible. But we are very keen to do that. But I don't think that even that is a substitute for working very hard with people and with communities to make sure that we are getting as many people as possible into their own home. And the state may have to come and do something to help that as well, because clearly just leaving it up to existing markets and banks isn't helping that happen. So I am very keen to see that we encourage as many people as possible to get into their own home.
Okay, now is this geared more towards families, or will this incorporate those people who are living alone?
Well, I think, we've got a much larger number of people now living alone. So it's got to, it can't just be for families, as important as that is. It's got to be the whole cross-section of New Zealanders, irrespective of their living circumstances. the reality is that owning your own home has become just an unrealisable dream for too many people. We need to turn that around. Bearing in mind also that owning your own home is one of those things that sets you up for retirement too. If you don't have your own home when you're at retirement, you've got rental costs that you're still meeting. Actually, it gets much harder. So there's a long-term reason about why we need to turn home ownership around and make it easier and more realistic for more people.
Okay, now we've got situations in Nelson where we have homeless. That must be, if it's in Nelson, I mean, it's just about everywhere. What can Labor do to help those sorts of people that have kind of dropped out of the society's eye, if you like, and surviving?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a real problem in a lot of places, and for some, in some cases, it's to do with just poverty. People cannot afford to live, and they are out on the streets. For some, it's mental health issues, and I think I'm getting an increasing amount of correspondence from people, from families in particular, who are concerned about just the lack of support and help that family members who've got mental health issues are getting, and many of them are winding up on the streets too. So I think there's a range of ways we need to deal with the problem of homelessness. But the truth is, it is real. It's happening in New Zealand. 20 years ago, if you'd said, listen, homelessness was going to be a real issue in New Zealand, you'd have been laughed at. But it is real now. And it's just part of that sort of breakdown in social support and social services that's happened under this government that we need to turn around.
Right. Now, another thing is Winz. People go to a Winz office and there's a security guard outside. What can be done to make Winz a more friendly place for people so that Winz don't feel so threatened?
Yeah, and this is a difficult problem, and we had the tragedy of the two Winz workers killed in Ashburton, and you certainly don't want to repeat of that. Equally, we've got to make sure that when people go to Winz, most people who go to Winz, they're in a bad space. They're in a sense of desperation often. They're running out of hope, and this is often their last port of call. So we've got to make sure those people are treated respectfully and well, and that the right support is there. So it's about getting that balance right, and that people are not feeling as if going through the Winz door is, security guards, and it gets a bit heavy, and then they can't communicate their situation well, and they don't appear to be taken seriously, or they get into a very upsetting sort of situation. We've just got to understand that when people are in a distressed state, it's a different situation than somebody who's for whom life is going well and they're confident and it's all roses. So we've just got to get the balance right about how we treat people.
Now, Andrew, why on earth would you want to be Prime Minister of New Zealand?
Oh, this is a fantastic country. This is a great country, and we're great people actually. In that New Zealand's reputation as people around the world is that we're open, we communicate with anybody, we don't have the sense of kind of social hierarchy and all that sort of stuff, and we're practical people. We can turn our hand to just about anything, and then as a country, we are a magnificent country. We've got a lot going for us. I just think we can do a lot better. I think there are a lot of people who want to have the opportunity to do a lot better, and we are a country that we've got a great history of fairness and people having opportunity and egalitarianism. I'd like to get some of that back, because that makes for a peaceful and harmonious community. And as you question about homelessness, there are people who are being left out and being left behind. That's not the New Zealand I grew up with, and it can't be the New Zealand of the future, and I want to do something about that.
Now, doors in Parliament. What's the goss on that?
Well, this is confusing me. When I remember straight after the election, and they did all the rearrangement, then we had national MPs on the same floor as Labor MPs. It was the national MPs that said, "Quick, we need a protocol on how we're going to do this until we get doors installed." So there was always an assumption there were going to be doors there. And there was a protocol, and I don't know whether it was because Judith Collins didn't want people to know she actually goes to the toilet occasionally or what. I don't know what it was. But
is that your open door policy?
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, there's one door she wanted open, yeah. And then so the doors were installed. It's news to me to find that the National Party decided at some point they didn't think that doors were needed. But anyway, they're there now. It's it's a bit of a storm in a teacup. It sounds to me at the very there's been a breakdown in communication. And if the National Party didn't want the doors, they should have told Jerry Brownlee, who seems to have arranged the doors to have been installed, for whatever reason. So yeah,
So they've got a bit of a miscommunication problem going
I think
on there.
I think there's a breakdown in communication on their own side, and I'd be horrified if doors have been unnecessarily installed, because it's not right. You don't want to spend money unnecessarily. But I think there's a bit more spade work to do to find out exactly what went wrong when.
Right. Now, last question. The TPP. Now, this is a thorn in many people's sides at the moment, and it's obviously quite topical.
Yeah.
What are your views on the negotiation process and where they stand at the moment?
Well, I think the negotiation process has been appalling in terms of letting people know what's going on, because it's all been behind closed doors and no one will say a thing. And it's that lack of transparency that I think has got a lot of people concerned. We know from what other people have said and what's leaked out and all the rest of it, there are some issues of concern under the TPP, and people are right to be concerned about it. And from Labor's point of view, we're concerned about it. So we're concerned about the investor-state dispute stuff. We're concerned about what happens with intellectual property, particularly copyright and patents, and therefore the impact on Farmac and whether Farmac's bill is going to shoot up, costing taxpayers, and the issue about SOEs. So whether governments can use SOEs for public interest purposes and all those sorts of things. The main thing is TPP is not just a free trade agreement. So from the Labor Party's point of view, we support free trade, we want better access to markets, but we don't like the stuff that has the potential to threaten sovereignty, the right of a government to make decisions in the best interests of New Zealanders. That's the real risk. And so until we know what's in it, we don't know how bad, or for that matter, how good that might be. There is a risk around those sorts of clauses, and we don't want improved market access if it means that our government loses the right to do the things in the best interests of New Zealanders. There's got to be a bottom line.
Andrew Little, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
It has been. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.